what I was saying is that I think something about the decision making should be noticed is how they approach the decision making process, meaning that which one will be radicals and which one will not, and can we discuss again what it means, how we define radicality when it comes to environment. So this is the most important thing for me regarding the decision making, is the process and how we approach radicality, basically. And just because I spoke a lot, maybe Vadim, you want to take over?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it would be the global divide between the global south and the global north. And it was something that I really understood at pre-COP youth event in Milan, because while high profile speakers would speak about electrifying public transport and producing green hydrogen, young representatives of African, Latin American, and Asian countries would stand up and say, well, we have 30% of our population living without any electricity at all. It doesn't come neither from coal nor from fossil fuels. It's not there. So once we acknowledge that the energy transition, for example, is a global thing, we need to bear in mind that setting the bar should not be only relevant to the global north, where things are going quite well, but the global south itself is a totally different paradigm, and we need to somehow align it all together. So I think I'm really interested in seeing how global
Vadim, I think you froze. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some malicious spell put in our meeting. Yeah. So I'm all in all, concluding it, I'm really curious whether world leaders will address this global divide and take into consideration at a more deep level than just acknowledging it. Yeah.
Do you want to nominate anyone, Vadim?
Yeah, so hello, Vera. Probably I would pass the floor to you.
Yeah, Vera, since you just joined, first of all, nice to meet you. I'm Anna. And we were having an icebreaker, and we were discussing if you have to choose one of the issues and the challenges that have to be discussed at COP26, which one would be the biggest one for you? Which one is, the one that really resonates with you and even your region, for example?
Okay, yeah, sorry for being late. I had to work. I'm Vera. I'm from the NAU. I think it's one of the organizations that is in YE. Very tough question as icebreaking. Well, I think maybe if this would be like a change in the mindset of the country, so they rewrite the ambitions for really regarding the goals for the 1.5 limit. So if they all would be not even just changing their plans, but also having a change of their mind, so they actually want to do it and not just because they have to do it. So I think that would be my thing, what I really would like to happen, so that it's not just something they have to do because they're going to the conference and they have to revise it, because otherwise it's not really working. So they're actually willing to do it. So that would be my big wish for things to happen. So do I have to give it to somebody else who was not there yet, or who hasn't spoken?
Okay, yeah, you're right. Sorry, I will nominate someone else myself. I think that Paula hasn't spoken yet. Paula, did you hear the question before?
I think, as far as I understand, the question is, what is the most important point to discuss in the context of COP26? I didn't hear all the answers because I arrived a bit late, so I'm not sure if some of these were repeated, but I would say that from like a European context and as someone who comes from Europe, I think an important point to discuss is the responsibility that Europe and the EU specifically has in driving change and ensuring that no one is left behind in a green just transition. So kind of putting accountability and responsibility where it's due and making sure that the burden is taken up by Europe when having to discuss and move forward in environmental and climate policies. Yeah, I think maybe that. And I read in the chat that Gagik hasn't spoken yet.
Yes, thank you. So actually it's hard to, I agree with all of the mentioned challenges that it might be difficult during the negotiation process, and it's also like very difficult to choose one because like everything is interconnected and so on. But maybe I will also concentrate on the topic about like the negotiation between those countries who have already benefited from industrialization and overproduction, and the countries who didn't have that let's say opportunity, not really opportunity, but like the chance to do it, and how and that are being damaged, harmed the most because of this climate changes. So the negotiation between those two sides of the world, I think it's gonna be like a little bit challenging in a way, because like when it comes to climate justice and green transition, it has to be equally, it has to happen everywhere. But at the same time, if we consider all these historical things that affected all those countries, it probably maybe it is challenging when it comes to negotiation process. But yeah, I mean, it's such a diverse and huge topic. We cannot just say like this is more important than the other one. But yeah, I think yeah, this is my opinion on this. I hope I was clear enough. My head is a little bit confused. And I will give the floor to Xenia, who just joined us.
Hi, sorry, I just heard part of it, so sorry for being late. I mixed up the times. Maybe I will listen first, like what you were actually talking about. Yeah, just jump into it.
Hi, Xenia, sorry. Yeah, I just typed the question in the chat. It was a question to introduce our topic, our main topic. I know it's a tough question for an icebreaker, but I really wanted us to get into the COP26 issues.
I think maybe I can say at least like just what came into my mind now. I think for me it's maybe the topic of climate financing to actually bridge the gap to enable us to create a way to a climate justice world. And yeah, I think as this is also coupled to the NDCs, it plays kind of a key role. Yeah.
That's great. I have to say that although there were some similar responses, which make sense. I mean, there are certain things that are important. I have to say that like you gave like very nice explanations, and also like you have different angles that you tackle the issue from. And yeah, I would also say, because I didn't go first, maybe I should have gone first. Sorry for that. But I think if I have to choose one issue, I'd also go for climate finance, especially for development. So both climate finance for development and the loss and damage issue, as recent reports have shown that some countries are explicitly working against this, which is quite shocking. And I think that it's absolutely shocking. Of course, we expect many things from from governments, but at the same time, it's also important that we recognize this responsibility. So it's also connected to what Paula said, right? So recognizing this responsibility also needs to lead us to actually taking action, starting from acknowledging this. Yeah, so of course, it was a tough question, as I said. And since it's already quite late, I think we can go to the first working session, and it will be mostly about youth, and we will discuss also other questions that are important for our organization, and I guess also for youth in general and in Europe, and that we want to present at COP26. So, Pega, do you want to introduce the first questions? Otherwise, I will go with a couple of questions on youth participation.
No, I think one thing that I will like to do is just briefly go through the flow of the breakout sessions. So the focus will be that for the first two sections we'll be together, because to us we think that it's a overarching topic, and overarching topics are youth and youth participation. The second is intersectionality and how does that relate to climate justice. And then after that, we will break out into two groups, which is Group A, and that mainly focuses on financing, the impact of climate change on nature and science and / innovation. So if you are really into, let's say, the nitty-gritty details of financing and innovation, that group is ready for you, and there are specific questions. But if then we have a second group, which focuses, let's say, on the logistics of implementation of climate change, which is energy, transport, but also importantly the role that cities play into climate change. So that is Group B. But before we go into groups, and then basically you will be given an option to freely roam around between the groups, is to go through the impact of climate change on young people. Your feedbacks will directly feed into the policy position paper that our YE COP26 delegates will have. So it's really important for you to be as specific as possible. So we will have a very concrete position paper on the day, or days on COP, during COP, that we can negotiate. So I think that's all I have to say, really, and I'll pass the ball back to you, Anna.
Thank you so much, Pega. Yeah, actually it was useful to reintroduce this for the last people that joined. And also I wanted to let you know that we have a Jamboard, and we'd like to use it to gather some key messages or some keywords that we will mention during our discussion. Of course, since we are also a small group, it's nice if we discuss interactively through the Zoom session. But whenever you want, you can also go on the Jamboard, and according to the working session we will be in, you can leave a sticky note in the specific wall. We have 3 different walls, 3 different Jamboards, and the first one is about working session number 1, and the other 2 are working session number 2, Group A and B, and of course there are different topics about them. Okay. So yeah, I think I'm going to send you the Jamboard link right here, so you can start opening it and browse through the questions. And in the meanwhile, we can start with the first couple of questions about youth participation in climate change policy. Okay, you should have received it. Please let me know if you cannot access it. Okay, all right. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to ask you, especially for those of you who joined today, who come from different organizations, member organizations of YE or partners, I'd like you guys to tell us if you had any logistical or financial support from the UN in order to engage with COP26 or to participate to COP26, if you'd like, of course, to let us know about your experience of approaching UNFCCC, for example. Yeah, and of course, if you have found some problems and some challenges in approaching the UN system, we would like to know also what the challenges are or were for you, and what's your take on, of course, the obstacles to youth participation to this conference. I don't know if there's someone who would like to start. Yes, if you want to, of course, you can start the session by just adding a sticky note, and then I can look at the notes. Otherwise, you can take the floor by raising your hand. Just a minute, I'm going on the Jamboard. I have a question. Vadim, if you have I don't know, an opinion about this, because I know that you have already participated to some events, you are free to speak. So I'm just trying to open the Jamboard. Okay, here I am. Yeah, Vadim, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you. So I would like just to clarify what do we refer to specifically when we say the UN? Because like the UN on its own cannot just recognize an organization and invite it personally to attend an event. If it is, in this case, an observer NGO that is part of the list, then it makes sense, and we could, dwell upon this. And on the other hand, there's also the younger structure, sending out emails to everyone who's on the mailing list. And so they, at a certain point, were promoting an application campaign where anyone could apply and win the chance of going to COP. So if we can specify a bit, it would make it much clearer.
If I may, Anna.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you wanted to reply.
Yeah. So basically, when we say UN, that includes the United Nations, the top one, and anything that is affiliated under it. So if they are empowered by the United Nations to use the capacity and the title of United Nations agencies, that also includes United Nations, and that includes YONGO, because they are the youth branch of UNFCCC.
They make sense, but I can see a sticky note here. Actually, there were two, but I can see one now, and it is with YE. We have not received any support from the UN and member states, but from a private fundraiser. Yeah, I guess that some of you from YE have written it, and this is what happened. YONGO has helped many to provide a logistical support and also financial support, yes, in a lottery format. But if you guys have to think about what challenges to youth participation exist in the UN climate change system, so under the UNFCCC, and if you have an idea of what would be the most effective and direct solutions to solve those challenges. It can be of any nature. Yes, please, Vera.
I wanted to add something. Like, we are a youth organization from a bigger one, so it's a big environmental organization, and we're part of the youth organization. And we had some problems for our accreditation because they said like that our mother environmental company is getting all the accreditation and they should give them the use. So we had a bit of issue with that. So we did not felt fully understood at the youth power, because we should get them from our mother organization, who also of course have a lot of experts who actually want to go through COP. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Yes, it's very tricky, right? In this sense, and there's always this kind of there's this problem around accreditation and looking for like how to get accreditation, and it's always important to like keep like a very large network, and you really have to be proactive in order to get accreditation, especially in the youth world. Also because as Vera was saying before, being part of a larger environmental organization as like the youth branch of this organization might in a way like become an obstacle instead of an opportunity. And I think that this has to be addressed in a way. So sorry. Okay, I was reading another reply. Not sure anymore to make it clear. Okay, it's fine. Don't worry. But yeah, I think that we have an idea more or less, but of course you can still. Yeah, I wanted to remind you guys that you can still participate to our consultation by filling out our consultation form. So if you'd like to do so and to reply to some questions, of course, including youth participation, you can still do that. And this consultation will be open until tomorrow. So you still have time to do that. Thank you. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about youth participation and public engagement also is, how do you see, also regarding challenges and obstacle to access to the COP26 and to climate change policies and decision making on the national level, for example? How is it possible to make sure that the public, so civil society, as well as, of course, youth movements and youth organizations can actually have access and get transparency from their governments on how these decisions are made, and find a doorway basically to have a say in, for example, implementation of NDCs by their governments? Like, how do you see this happening for young people especially, but also in general from the point of view of public engagement? Yeah, just like not to make a suggestion, but to like explain what I mean. Some countries have established some youth councils, or basically some platforms where youth can, in a way, elaborate and have access to what the government is doing in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation and finance decisions, especially, of course, regarding the NDCs. but other countries did not, and many countries did not. And for example, would you see this being upscaled? Yes, Pega.
Oh, others did as well. Sorry. I'll be brief. But I think one thing is that when it comes to NDCs, which basically stands for National Determined Contributions, is that a lot of countries or member states don't feel as though that young people or NGOs are, a partner to the implementation of the national determined contributions. So as a result, they are not very much consulted or actually play a part in determining what that state wants to implement for the next year. So as a result, it's very much treated as a ministerial, to-do list rather than anything. And because of that, us as civil societies have very little leverage as of how we use that, the national determined contributions as a checklist to hold them into account. And there is very much rarely an opportunity to actually bring our dislike to the way they're implementing it. So I don't think they have thought about it that far. And I don't know if they want to, which I think will be very important to discuss in this COP. But yeah.
Thank you, Pega. I think that Vadim had his hand up, and then Ajar can take the floor. Vadim?
Yeah, so in my view, and I would speak from experience, at national level, the thing that is really lacking is the institutionalized, permanent formats of engagement for young people on climate issues. So this is a really great issue once you think of on the ways your government might consult young people. I mean, I would be very, happy to acknowledge that in many nation states now, it's not a rarity saying governments addressing young people and hearing back from them, but it happens on an ad hoc basis. So once a political party wants to win the votes, it approaches young people and listens to them. It might really borrow something, and it could be a contribution eventually. But then a situation changes and you don't see these formats anymore. So in my view, one of the key pathways towards ensuring that youth participation is not, tokenism, but it is something that reproduces itself despite of any, going in and out circumstances, is the institutionalized way of inviting young people. So these could be, indeed, these could be boards, these could be youth councils, but youth councils, not the national youth councils, as these are predominantly large structures, being responsible for the plethora of activities around. So it's not only climate change, it's everything. And once they are charged with everything, they might not be paying sufficient attention to the climate change issue. So in order for it to be really effective, I think some additional and minor and permanent formats should be envisioned.
Yeah, Ajar, you can take the floor.
Thank you. Actually, I wanted to react to something that Pega said when you said that you think that they would not like to implement public engagement, councils or something like that. Why would you, why, in your opinion, they wouldn't want to do that?
Very good question. Can I? Can I? Sorry, by the way, if there is a lot of children noise, it's half term in the UK, so suddenly there's like an influx of children in the streets. So yeah, just take it as a background noise in the, from my interventions. I think if it's up to the member states in general, I think one thing that history has taught us is that consultation to outside of ministerial level is always an effort. for governments. So if there is no obligation for them to do it, they would happily not do it. And I'm talking from a Western civilized country, you know, in a bracket. So because of that, one thing I think that is lacking, and I think one thing that I've noticed from human rights obligations is that there is a right for public to be consulted. That has been brought into play from you know, international regulations, whereas for climate change regulations, it's not very much a binding decision that you need to consult the public. So because of that, it's a very much cherry picking. Some do it, some don't. Some do it very well, some don't do it very well. So it's not a harmonized, let's say, system, is it? And because of that, one thing that lays is an opportunity to demand an obligation to consult at all stages, rather than when there is a severe case. Then in that case we already have an obligation, which is on an environmental impact assessment. But outside of that, there is no need for them to consult, other than if they choose to. And I come from a National Youth Council myself, so the UK government is, you know, in regular consultation with us. But when it comes to climate crisis, there is no consultation process. I'm not saying they should go to the National Youth Council only, but I'm saying usually that's the first layer of reaching out to young people, and sadly that is not there itself. So I hope that answered it. But yeah, feel free to also come back to that. I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, Hajar, do you want to reply to react to this, because you had your hand up? Okay.
I just forgot.
It's okay. No, it's fine. Alice, did you want to also react to this?
Yeah, sorry. I think what Pega was just saying kind of reminded me of something like when we're talking about representation and making sure that young people are actually, you know, involved in political decision and they have a seat at the table and a say in political decisions. I think what's like something that to me is also deeply kind of connected to all this is making sure that this kind of consultations first of all happen, which, as you were saying, most of the time isn't even the case, but then that they also actually have an impact and that they're not used or even purposely instrumentalized by governments to not make themselves accountable. In France lately, we've had this kind of consultation of civil society to reach, you know, the goals of the Paris Agreement, and basically it's, you know, it was quite a long process, and they came up with all these policy papers and proposals, and some of them were actually quite young people. And at the end of the day, it was a great kind of communication effort for the government, because it was also a way to say, hey, we're actually making sure that, you know, people from different backgrounds, of like, you know, like different ethnicities, races, genders, disabled people and so on, like diverse people are actually involved. But then it wasn't necessarily something that they actually took into account when it came to, you know, passing new laws and making sure that those recommendations actually had an impact. So I feel like it's also the thing of like taking part, but also making sure that you're not used as some kind of, as part of, you know, some kind of communication strategy where it's some kind of tokenism, meaning you're here to show that you're here, and you're here because they need young people to kind of have this kind of legitimate the whole process. But your proposals, your ideas, your voices won't necessarily be actually listened to. So this is kind of the thing, right, with representation, is also making sure that it's not just about being here, which is already a challenge in itself, but also about having a real impact, which is like the biggest challenge of all, obviously, but which I find is also something that it's difficult to address both at the same time, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Alice. I think that you all guys gave like a lot of ideas, and it was a nice discussion. And Hajar, did you want to? Yes. Please go on, but keep in mind that we are a little bit behind schedule. So after your intervention, I would like to give the floor to Paola, who will ask another question. Thank you. But Hajar, you go first.
Sorry, I'm going to be quick. I just wanted to react to what Alice said about how we should not be instrumentalized by politics and everything, but at the same time, I think it's quite challenging because it's like there is a codependency, because we cannot be fully independent when we want to implement some things, but at the same time, like I'm in this in between where I believe in institutions because they are the biggest way to reach in a most democratic way the most people, but at the same time, I think in order to be sufficiently independent, to like have your voice to count, you have to be really strong or work with your allies a lot before starting to work with institutions. That's
Thank you so much, Ajar. I think I will now go on and ask the next question. And this time we're talking about intersectional issues and climate justice. So we're just gonna start by asking, what do you think the impact of climate change on women and those identifying themselves as LGBTQ+ is? And what barriers and or also opportunities do you think they might face in society? It's quite broad, so I think you can address it from different points, and feel free to maybe just address one group instead of the other if you have a specific response for one. Alice, do you want to go ahead?
I'm sorry, I don't want to talk too much, so if I do, please just stop me. But this is a topic I'm really passionate about, so I'm probably going to talk about women mainly, just because this is my experience, my personal experience, so I feel like I relate to this a bit more. To me, the impact of climate change on women is kind of threefold. I would say threefold in terms of the impact it has on women, the resources that women have to face this, and also the role played by kind of systemic issues and structures in terms of how we actually address climate issues. I think as women, we are more impacted by climate change. This is something that most studies are actually have been demonstrating lately. So we are facing the impact of this, especially in the global south. I think this is something where women really have to face the impact of climate change on a daily basis. At the same time, we have less resources to actually address those issues in the most effective way. We have less power. And then we also tend to, you know, kind of, we are navigating those unequal kind of gender structures, right? And so we have less power and we also have less resources, and sometimes we just have to do more to address those issues. I remember reading an article, this is from a very Western perspective, but about this kind of, you know, this kind of mental burden and having to try to go zero waste and to make sure that you're actually, you know, climate friendly in your daily life, and that a lot of women felt like they had to kind of play this role in their household, which means we are more impacted, we have less resources, but we are also expected to do more. So this is kind of this terrible kind of triangle, which I feel like is really challenging for women, especially in the global south.
Thank you. I think that was a very comprehensive response. I think also Ajar wants to speak.
Yes, thank you. It's about like the LGBTQ+ community, and I do agree with Alice that for now, like I do not know any study that have made outputs about how climate change can affect LGBTQ+ community in the global north, but I know that, for example, in the global south, like this is something that I've read and that was quite striking and very logical. But for example, in India, there is a huge transgender community, and there, in order to assert your rights, you have to have your own house, and in your house you invite your friends, and this is how you protect yourself. Even though, like in India, they have a way different way of managing or dealing with transgender people than here, but still they are not quite considered. And because of the fact there is the climate change provokes a lot of monsoons, and monsoons who are very, I don't know if it's the right word in English, monsoon, but anyways, like it's the rain and everything. So their houses get destroyed, and they are more vulnerable because they start to be homeless. Thus, people consider that they can like be violent towards them and stuff like that. And also it has effects on like climate migrants. And we all know how migrants are very vulnerable groups, but imagine if you're from an LGBTQ plus community and being a migrant, you put your life at stake. So I think these things are the things that I'm thinking of. Thank you, and bye.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think that is a very valid point. And there's obviously the interlinking of like different fragile groups that then kind of pile up. I think it's also very true to some extent in the global north. Homelessness, especially youth homelessness, it's overwhelmingly predominant among LGBTQ plus youth. And obviously homeless people are more severely affected by any type of extreme weather events. So I think that is also an easy parallel that we can draw with LGBTQ communities here closer to home. But Pega, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one question that always comes into my mind when I think of, you know, not only women, LGBTQI, but any minority groups is, you know, will climate change push back all the efforts that we've made towards those groups? So the idea of recognizing that LGBTQI exist, whether you like it or not, and that they are not subject to any violence, to protection. Does that mean when climate crisis actually becomes so apparent that we will forget about those causes, about those vulnerable groups, and we start working on this idea that may the fittest survive, as we have done so back in our ancestry times? So, and I think, yeah, that will happen again, because that's what happens when there is a crisis and everybody needs to survive, isn't there? So for me, when I get into a group like yours, is to ask the question, what can we do now to make sure that when the crisis becomes so apparent that we don't leave marginalized communities behind? What prevention can we take now? What prevention can we push for our decision makers to take? Do you have any? And if so, it would be really great to hear about them.
I think maybe, yeah, Ajar, you want to go, and then Alice, I think that's how the order you raise your hand in.
I think the most important thing when it comes like to marginalized groups regarding the climate crisis is just to make links, like to link up all, like climate crisis is just not something that you can put in a box and it's not linked to all the other groups. And this is something that is not quite realistic, and even like the human brain cannot make up very complex links. And I think that as advocate groups, what we can do to help people be able to understand this is like to highlight studies that have been made, to like put the spotlight on scholars that have been working on racism, environmental racism or stuff like that. And I think that just creating links can help a lot of people to understand and not just be focused on the climate crisis.
How about you, Alice?
Yes, I definitely agree with what Ajar just said. I think my answer is pretty similar, actually. I find it very interesting that politically in some, so this is a very, like, again, Western perspective, right? But I feel like in a lot of Western countries right now, there has been an increasing emphasis put on the kind of connection between the climate crisis and social issues. which I find really interesting. And I feel like this is also something that is kind of becoming part of the political discussion, like not only within grassroots organizations, civil mobilizations, but also inside of political parties, which I find very interesting because you have all these levels kind of combined all together. And so I feel like as soon as you address the climate crisis as being also about social justice, about climate justice and so on, it's really the best way to kind of frame it and to show that there is no climate justice without human rights, without equality and so on. And so I feel like the framing is very important here, but also making sure that all climate movement is truly inclusive and open to anyone, which is actually what my project is about. So obviously I'm very interested in doing this. But yeah, just definitely like making sure that the framing is right, to make sure that people can actually take ownership on this, because I think when people feel like this is also part of their story and this is also something that is going to impact us in a very important way, I feel like this is the best way to kind of get people on board.
Hi. Sorry, we were yeah, we basically introduced one question, and then we sadly had to leave without answering to the question. But if you had, I wonder if you managed to reply to like almost all questions, or like some of the issues were touched upon. If someone from the sorry. Well, I'll go first, maybe. So with Group A, we discussed mainly climate finance, and we introduced a question on nature. Unfortunately, we didn't discuss everything about nature. Actually, we were like introducing one general question about nature and nature-based solutions. But regarding climate finance, we were talking about like how it is possible to make sure that the climate finance mechanisms are going in the right direction and they are following a transparent and fair process. And also we were discussing the challenges that, for example, organizations have to face with like helping, for example, local organizations with starting a project. And hopefully Alice was with us too, and it was really nice to hear from her experience as a project manager. And oh yes, thank you so much, Alice, for being with us today. Okay, does any of you want to introduce what you talked about in the other room?
Yeah, so we talked about all the three. I mean, we managed to cover all the 3 points, with the first 2 addressed in more depth, and the last one on cities eventually got our intersectional part because it was somehow integrated in the transportation thing. So as far as energy is concerned, we spoke about the necessity of taking a more regionally specified approach once delivering on policy objectives, even though these might be set for the entire regional bloc, like the EU. Still, the regional specificities play a crucial role in implementing what has been, announced. And then transportation, it took much of our time to talk about transportation because many of us had some bright ideas in that. Just to put it briefly, we talked about transportation, how to make certain transportation types greener. We kind of agreed on the top-down approach, which is basically creating incentives at the policy level to drive people forward on the way from fossil fuel-based vehicles to electric vehicles, and it implies, a plethora of actions and policy novelties, so that people, even though they now see there is no infrastructure around, this kind of cars is, if it's cars, more expensive, that they know what options are available to them and why they can opt for this type of transportation, and they will not lose. We also touched upon aviation and flights, with covering both the EU case, when indeed distances are quite close and you would rather pick a train or even a Flixbus going from Vienna to Budapest or Budapest to Bratislava. And then you also have vast spaces like Siberia in Russia, where no means in winter are available except for planes, and people are really dependent on that. So the point of discussing this was that instead of advocating for eliminating it as a thing per se, we should also consider regional specificity in this case and think of substituting the kind of fuel used to power airplanes. And that was the last point we discussed. It was the perspective of applying hydrogen fuel to aviation.
Thank you so much. It was a very interesting set of things, and wow, congratulations for having discussed all of these things in such a short time. And I would like to ask you guys, because I cannot see it on the Jamboard, did you use the Google Doc to like note down, or did you just discuss? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so then maybe I will go from there. Yeah, so I would like to ask you if if you had some final thoughts on what was discussed in the other room. So, well, actually, you are mainly from room from Group B. I recognize that, but if there's something, for example, about climate finance that you like to say, or for example, I can introduce, if you want, I can introduce the question that we were going to discuss about nature and nature-based solutions. So if you have some thoughts about climate finance. Okay. Then I'd like to ask you something about nature, because I think it's important to also talk about that. And I think we can go for 3 to 5 minutes. I will take 2 responses, and then we can close the session. I know that we are running a bit late, but I hope that you can stay with us. So the question that I wanted to ask about nature-based solution is that, well, while on the one hand, nature-based solutions can be a very important solution, both for climate mitigation and adaptation. On the other hand, there are many risks that we are facing that basically are faced with implementing them, with also financing nature-based solutions. And I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, if you had some main challenges that, like, if you can think about the challenges, and also like what would be your suggestion to avoid the risks and the challenges of implementing nature-based solutions. One of them, for example, being being used as an excuse, for example, to not reducing emissions by the private sector, or the so-called greenwashing, right? And proposing nature-based solutions as a way to say, okay, we are doing something to mitigate the climate, we are planting trees, but then on the other hand, not reducing emissions. Another risk, of course, is land grabbing and problems with respecting the rights of indigenous peoples, of local communities, and how to ensure that nature-based solutions are implemented in a way that doesn't, that involves instead of exclude and hurt livelihoods and people, while of course keeping biodiversity, protecting biodiversity. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, I have. Oh, sorry, I have. I have some thoughts on that. Probably not really. That don't stick strictly to the question, but still, I would like to voice them. I think that nowadays, those NDCs that include natural-based solutions, and it is, if they do, it is a great step forward, because, you know, in the text of Paris Agreement, there is no mention of nature-based solutions. So even though we see some NDCs covering nature-based solutions, still the majority of such moves concern forests only. So it's either reforestation or even planting trees, as simple as that. And I believe that the potential of natural ecosystems for restoration, not only of themselves, but of territories that have been abandoned or have been overexploited, this kind of potential is not unleashed. If we talk only about forests, we do not address even half of the world's biodiversity, and we just miss on another chance to improve things. So one of the points I would like to raise is that we should probably think of including more nature-based solutions in national strategies of adaptation. And NDCs in this regard might be a good step to somehow launch the call and act by example. Because if we stick to forests only, again, it does not make sense for many of the nations. It just, you know, half a measure, even though for some contexts it does feed. I mean, if Finland does it, it definitely helps Finland covered with forests, but it should not be only that.
I completely agree, and that is also one of the main issues, right? Also, many organizations on the ocean side are trying to push governments and also the private sector to like think about ocean solutions, right? But in a way that does not only exploit ocean resources to mitigate the climate, but also to actually improve biodiversity, coastal biodiversity and ecosystems, while also mitigating and adapting to climate change. One of the main issues that is discussed is, for example, restoring mangroves, which is like very, very important, both on the mitigation side and on the adaptation side. Because, for example, on the adaptation side, mangroves can help with reducing the salinization of the land, and this is so important. But very often, like Vadim was saying, we only talk about the forest sector and restoring forests, which is still very important and has to be done in the right way also. But on the other hand, also other ecosystems need to be addressed with nature-based solutions. Yeah, so this is very important to ask and to remind, right, during the negotiations. Vadim, did you want to react again? Or
Yeah, I'd like to add quickly. Apart from forests and other stuff that we discussed, I would also like to say that actually nature-based solutions are they are the primary thing that either nations or private sector are implementing now as their obligations under Article probably 6 of the Paris Agreement, which has a little clause on non-market approaches and non-market mechanisms. So nature-based solutions are indeed this non-market mechanism. And I think the power of non-market mechanisms is still underestimated. We tend to consider efficient measures that are directly linked with financial stimulation, with quotas, with giving loans, subsidizing things. And it's indeed important. If we have no money, if we don't stick to this financial stimulation, there will be no progress achieved. But then in the shade of these decisions that are market driven, that are financially driven, we overlook the potential of non-market solutions, and nature-based solutions is the primary thing that falls under this scope. So I think we somehow, and it might sound ridiculous, but we need to somehow remind those in charge that this is part of the solution that is stipulated in the Paris Agreement. So why don't we consider it in a more, dignified way? Why don't we say like, yes, this is the way we can also approach things?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And also, like, always, we have to keep in mind that the Paris Agreement, like, we always think about going forward, but if we are not following the Paris Agreement in the first place, nothing is really working. And yeah, so this is very important. I think that if you want to add anything about this discussion, I will take another quick response, and afterwards I'd like to close the session. But before closing the session, Vera, if you can stay with us, I'd like to know, and I'm asking you now so that in case you can brainstorm about this before replying, if you want to tell us if you have some actions that you're doing, some advocacy, or if you have a plan and regarding COP26 with your organization. But I think that Gagi had one hand up, or not? No, sorry, I saw your hand like this. Okay, so if nobody else is asking questions, okay, so yes, Vera, go on.
Yeah, I can add something. So last year there were the first time people from our organization on the COP, and we did this very nice photo book for our environment minister. So we made like pictures of what the use demands from the environmental minister, and I think this year we're doing it with all organizations of Germany together. So we're like collecting pictures of people who are demanding something for the COP. And I'm not sure if we will make a big wall and print all the pictures on there, but we wanted to like make a thing that we can give actually to them, because it was very cool, because we had a lot of talks with some ministries after that, and Svenja Schulze, so our environment minister, always like showed the book from the COP that we made to say like, oh yeah, this is the voice of the youth, it's present, it has to be more loud. So we were very happy about that. So we're definitely planning on doing this. I think it's realized on the LCOI, so like the youth COI, so we're making a lot of pictures there. But I don't think we have planned something beside that. I think we're taking the train to the COP, so we're planning on meeting up with the other German delegates there to make some more plans.
So you're going to COP26 and to COI?
And well? No, I'm not able to go to COI, but some other people are going,
okay,
but not from my organization. But we have like this very good German connection. So we have like a group where we met up, I think 4 times to prepare for going to the COP. So it's quite interconnected.
Okay, thank you. And do you have, for example, sorry, I've seen some hands up. Do you guys want to react to what Vera said, or?
Yeah, I'd like to react really quickly. So Vera, I'm from Germany, right? So yeah, in Germany, there is a guy called Joshua. He was also a delegate to pre-COP youth event. And what he did, I don't know what organization he belongs to, but what you said now about the pictures and presenting them to the minister, there's a similar thing he's done recently. There was a youth gathering at the Bundespräsident Palace, and so they met Steinmeier, and they handed over a tick box list on climate change notions and like messages that they as young people would like him to cover during his Christmas speech. And so that was a very funny thing, but actually
that's really good.
Yeah, so they created like a paper with like recognizing the importance of climate mitigation. I mean, I'm not pretending to say that it was that way, but something like that. So second, invest more in nature-based solutions. And they handed over to him and said, this year, you'll be delivering the speech and we're waiting for those things to be covered. Yeah, so this was also a nice way of approaching a high-level politician in a very playful manner. And what you described, what you said, also reminds me of the action that Joshua and his colleagues took while meeting Steinmeier. Yeah.
Do you know his full name, like Joshua something?
I can share it with you personally because now I don't remember his surname.
Yeah, that would be cool. But yeah, maybe I find it out. That would be great. Thanks.
And Pega, did you want to react as well?
Yes, I was waiting for you as the moderator to give me the floor.
Great.
Thank you. I'm very, it's very sad to hear that you're not coming, because actually one thing that we are doing as YE is that we are meeting young delegates with the fundraisers. So, you know, the organizations that basically fund activities within COP. So, and also we will have, well, that's it. It's not organized yet, but we are in the process of organizing, is to organize young delegates with Franz Timmermann. So I will contact you just to find out, you know, how to reach to the young German delegates, just so as soon as we have the update, we can also invite them to the room as well. And
to clear the misunderstanding, I'm not going to the LCO, I'm going to the COP.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
yeah, no, I will be there. Yes,
okay.
I will be there.
I'll find you then. Yeah, so we will coordinate that way, and yeah, there'll be a lot of breakout sessions and lunch breaks. So yeah, I'll keep in touch that way from YE and make sure that you are kept in the loop as our MO. So I'll come back to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks.
Great. That's it. Sorry, Anna, if I overspoke.
So, question in return. So, what is the YE delegation planning on doing there? Do you have a plan or a project or a present?
Actually, we have too many projects, if that's a thing. But one thing is that we are sending a delegation of 9 people. Majority are here with you right now. So these are the people we'll be taking. And basically we will be divided in 2 weeks. So I'll be leading the first week and Nathan is leading the second week. And one thing that we are doing is we are meeting with fundraisers, decision makers, and also other young delegates with the help of Youngo. So these are the things that we are trying to do, basically facilitating them. And at the same time, what we are trying to do also is to make sure that all youth organizations push for rather a same message. So we don't sound as though one is pushing for mitigation, others pushing for adaptation. So we are also trying to do the coordination effort with youth organizations. And during, for instance, lunchtime, break times, we will be meeting with young people who are also delegate there. So that's why I'm saying, let me know if you're going, because there is a lot of information to basically keep in the loop of. And yeah, I think that's it so far, but mainly we are trying to coordinate between different efforts and yeah, be that bridge really, as well as basically advocating.
Okay, thank you. We'll definitely see you there then.
Great. I'll see you there. And I wanted to tell you something because I'm not sure whether you joined when Chloe was presenting about one of our projects, but basically we have actually mainly Chloe has prepared this very nice Trello board, which includes our toolkit. And the toolkit is made basically for public access, especially basically for young people, especially if you're going to COP26 to better understand COP26, how to do advocacy, and also main stakeholders to look for at COP26. Thank you, Hazar, for sending the Trello board link. So Vera, if you want to check it out, we are also there as delegates on the Trello board, and I think it's very well made, and there are many resources that can be useful for young people. So if not strictly, you know, for you and other delegates from your organization, also if you have young people in your organization that want to know more, of course, you are free to share in your network and in your organization. So for being here this long, and sorry for being quite late. And I really hope that we had, you know, we did some nice discussions, and I think so. I had fun with you guys, and I'll see you all either at COP or in the next meetings with our delegation. And thank you so much for being here. For Vera, just for anything you need, if you have other questions on our presence at COP, or you know, you want to tell us anything, feel free to email me, the author of many emails, or Pega, who is a member of the Secretariat. Thank you so much, everyone. And I remind you that the consultation is still open until tomorrow if you want to participate. Thank you. I wish you all a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.